Good morning, gardening friends. Today we've got another project, and I want to explain it, but it's really kind of hard to see it from this angle, or even if I come over and do it from this angle. So I'm going to have to show you a different angle. So perhaps now this will be a little bit more obvious. If you look careful at the picture, you'll see the two sort of indentations on the hill. Actually, there's one you can see some, I think that's an iris growing out of it. And to the right of that, and to the right of the middle of the window here, there's another indentation, and we just haven't put anything up there yet. But then if you kind of pan down and look at where I got the pepper section of the garden and that one bucket full of rocks with the two light bulbs hanging off of it, the red and green, if you look at it really carefully and you look at the bottom of the window, you'll see that it's actually pitched upwards. It's not level. And this has been bugging me every time I look through this window. So ultimately today we're going to try and solve that problem by pulling the piece of wood that is there. I don't know how easy it's going to be to see it from inside here, but that piece of wood that's behind those pots has been sitting there for years and years and years, and I think it has rotted, and it has allowed the left side to fall a bit. So ultimately, if you can see, there's a couple of bricks there under the white bucket. I'm going to extend that brickwork over to the right. I'm going to have to pull out some of those stepping stones up above. I'm going to pull out some of the pots to make room and ultimately dig down and start putting the new stones, which I have purchased, in that area. So I'm going to get that set up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so step one was a bit of planning and trying to calculate kind of from the edge of that block right there. You can kind of see it. I need to pull those out. All the way over to about where this Nandina is. That's basically, then I'm going to kind of return a little bit. If that's the first step, is calculating the materials I'm going to need, and here are some of those materials, then I think step two is going to be demolition. I basically need to, first I need to get a bunch of stuff out of the way, like those lights I just mentioned, that bucket full of rocks. I need to pull some of the pepper plants off. I think I'm just going to put them over in the next part of the garden there, the sun garden, if you will. And then I got to remove the pavers so I can ultimately get that piece of wood out. Okay, that's almost a clean slate. Now you can kind of see a little bit better the bricks that are already there, and this piece of wood running across that I'm ultimately going to extract. And there's a brick there, and I believe I put that in there a while back. I can't, maybe the right side was falling down and I put it there to support it, but then ultimately the left side is down low. Ignore the sort of difference in height there. That's where the stepping stones were, and the dirt was right up to them, so that'll ultimately get all kind of redone. But so there's basically two more things to do here. One, I've got to deal with getting this piece of wood out, which is going to be fun, but I'll do it. And then I've got these bricks over here that were already existing, and they may not exactly line up with my plan. Now ultimately I've got stepping stones already down here, and what would be really good would be, if I can, to set it back the same size as another stepping stone, so I could put another row of stones up along this way. But I'm not 100% sure if I can do that because of this pipe that's sticking out of the ground. Now that is not a water pipe, that is just a piece of actual, I think that's galvanized pipe that got painted at some point or whatever, but I think it was put in there to hold the piece of wood that's in there. I don't know if we absolutely need it, but I'm going to have to do some calculations and figure out whether or not I can slip one of those bricks, one of those slump stones, over it and make that work, or if I'm going to have to try and remove the pipe I don't think it's connected to anything else. I think it's literally just driven into the ground. And if I remove it, it's not the end of the world, because ultimately this will be kind of a retaining wall, but not a full-blown retaining wall. It'll be dry laid. It's not going to be mortared in. And, well, we'll just have to see. So I got to attack the next couple of things. Okay, so the piece of wood didn't fight me too much. Wasn't too bad to get it up, but there's something interesting about this piece of wood, and let me see if I can do this one-handed here. It's cut. It's like they took a 4x4 and cut it on kind of a slant, if that makes any sense. And the more I think about it, the more I think that might actually be connected to the post we have over here for the gate. Let's see if I can't. Going to show you that is cut very similarly. So I have a feeling that's what they did. They needed to cut the post like that because they were putting the gate on an angle. This side is not like that. But I think they did that, and then the remaining piece ended up going over here. So it was just sort of a haphazard. I don't know if they were planning to make this look like it was going to be a gardening area. I mean, the wall was there. I added the stepping stones. I've been doing all of the stepping stones up along here. The few extra bricks that are here, that might be from a previous repair to the wall, or they might have just been extra, but there is some mortar still on that one, so I'm going to end up actually pulling that one out and clearing the mortar, just so that I have a flat surface to work with. But that's the first one. Now I got to figure out this pipe. Okay, well, I got it out. You can kind of see how much of it was buried. Is about half and half. And I was concerned that being a pipe that's threadable, it might have been encased in concrete. Well, that wouldn't have anything to do with the threads. Or it might actually be connected to some kind of structure underground, but I don't think so, because ultimately I got it out, and you can see the threads on here. Let's see if I can get it in focus. I'm hoping that's focusing, but if you just kind of look at the threads as I turn it around, you can see there's a rust spot right at the end of the threads. That would imply that the threads themselves were buried. So if that's the case, then it wasn't screwed into anything. Doesn't look like it was encased in concrete. There's actually a little, got a flat spot there? Maybe not. No, that's just debris that was hanging onto it. So I think I'm okay. I'm just going to be able to go ahead and refill that hole. Now I'm going to try and deal with getting the mortar off of the existing bricks and then resetting them. The good news about all of this is now I can set the dimensions that I want. I can set it back as far as I want, or as forward as far as I want. The only real limiting factor is the length of these stones, these bricks. I'm just going to call them bricks from now on. The length of these bricks, they're 16 inches in general. Some of the older ones may not be 16 inches, but the newer ones are. And we'll see what I can do. Okay, well, there's the first real sort of surprise. I was getting ready to remove the mortar off the top of that brick, extract these bricks and clean them up first, when I realized there's a piece of wood in here. Another piece of wood, and it looks like it's rotted out. I'm hoping that's not insect damage, but ultimately I'm going to have to go extract this one too before I can really start working this whole thing out. Surprise! Another one. How quickly I forget things. I was excavating out this board so I could pull it out, and then I said, okay, let me remove that brick that I stuck under there. No, that's not a brick. If you look at it carefully, it's got the same profile as one of these stepping stones. So I'm not sure how deeply buried that is. Maybe it's just a half, because I've got, there was one that I remember at one point that broke, and these are some of the pieces. So maybe that's like a half, but just kind of interesting. So if that's a whole stepping stone, I could take advantage of that. Yep, it was a full stepping stone. so I can make use of that somewhere. Okay, so I have now finished breaking off the old mortar from the bricks, and this is kind of what that spot looks like. And I guess that's pretty much it for the demolition. I think the next thing I'm going to do actually is not really necessary, but well, I'll just kind of show you the line of bricks here, and these are the old ones I pulled out. You can kind of tell the difference. But I think I'm going to pull some of those out, as well as like this particular stepping stone and the others that were up there, and just take them out to the driveway and wash them down, get some of the dirt off and make them look a little bit fresher. And then I'm going to have to come in here and I'm going to have to set a line to determine the height at which this entire wall is going to be, and so I can keep it level as I build it. Okay, so if anybody was wondering why I wanted to hose some of these off, first of all, you can see the variation in colors on some of these, and I'd like to kind of be able to match it a little better when they're that dirty. It's a little hard to tell. Like this is a slightly different shade from that one, and it really depends on where you get them. Home Depot versus Lowe's, honestly. I think the red ones tend to be more consistent, but the tan ones, there's kind of a lighter tan and a darker tan. That tan's got a little bit more red in it. So if you start putting them next to each other, and there's a good rainstorm, let's say, then it becomes a little more obvious. So at least by having them cleaned off, I can put them back in an order that kind of makes sense. But let's see what this looks like after I hose it down. Okay, so it needs to dry up a little bit, but now you should be able to see the color a little bit better. And interestingly enough, I'm not sure that's the face that I want to have facing out. I think this is going to be the back side of it, because I think this face, it's kind of in the shadows a little bit, but hopefully that looks a little bit better. And also, I mean, this is the old slump stone. This doesn't look like the new slump stone. So, and one more thing with this. Hope I can do this without that's a cap. That's not regular slump stone. That actually was designed to be a cap, a full-sized cap. That's just an interesting bit of the archaeology. Okay, so one thing led to another. I got all of the stepping stones cleaned, and the reason I'm out of breath, I'm gonna call it quits here because I'm tired, I'm hurting, but I got the first few blocks in place, leveled, ready to go. Ultimately, I needed to dig out and excavate enough to be able to get across so I can lay a couple of stones on the other end after taking some measurements, and then run a string across the top of that over to the corresponding corner on that side, so that I can make sure that the tops of all of them are level with each other and actually level. If you look back here, ultimately I was too deep on the stepping stones, like that's one deep and then one more would be two deep up on top, but because I've come back a bit, it's actually only a few inches, but because I've come back, it's starting to look like, I don't think I'm going to go too back because I've got to hold that whole hill back. I'd have to carve into the hill and do all sorts of manicuring of the hill. So I think at this point I'm literally just going to run across the top, and then I planned it in such a way that there's enough room for me to fit another stepping stone in there. I think I can actually fit the full 12 inches in there. At least I know I can fit them from here. That one's only jogged over because of the sprinkler. So I'm pretty wiped out. I'm going to call it quits for the day, and I suppose this is a good enough place to end part one of this saga. So I thought this was just going to be a 5-minute video of me doing some work. I mean, it would just be really quick cuts and everything, but here we are. end of day one. This is not a small project. So this is the Budget Gardener signing off, saying, may your thumb and hopefully your blocks be nice and straight, and may your thumb be green.